Today, we become legends.
Hey, my name's Zinter, welcome back to the channel, and today we have 11.6 update notes to go over. It's going to be a big mid-season patch for Smite 1, so that's pretty exciting. Tons of new stuff going to be coming, so let's just jump right in without any further ado. So we've got some new skins, we've got Goth Gourmet Morrigan, Party Animal Danzaburo, Mighty Mutt Fenrir, which is a pretty funny one. We've got Baldur's Gate 3 Kepri, aka Dreadstalker, Lil Bite Sobek, Honor Roll Amaterasu, Ceramic Circuit Kali, and Nano Mansa Baron Samdi. That's a pretty cool one as well. So all these skins will be cross-gen as always. Those are new skins coming in 11.6. But moving on to Balance Live with 11.6 update, first up we have Conquest. So a fan favorite system is getting a big update this patch. We are adding new features to the Shaman Camp to allow for players to continue to upgrade their spirit totems throughout the match. Oh, that's pretty cool. Shaman Camp, one of my favorite additions they ever made to the game, so adding a little bit more on top of that is probably going to be really cool. And we are also improving feedback around invading. With these changes, we hope to see an additional macro level play around these camps as their buffs become more powerful, the more players are able to play Diligent around them. So I assume they're going to be adding where invading takes away their totem. That's what it sounds like. So new spirit totem upgrade system. The Shaman Camp now continues to cycle through its rotation without limit, so it's not going to turn into back camps anymore after 5 rotations. Each time a player clears the Shaman Camp, their corresponding color of spirit totem will spawn or upgrade based on the existing spirit totems up to 3 times per match. So the first spawn will still be Harpies as always. Players can now invade and steal spirit totems to their team. When a spirit totem camp is killed, regardless of which team kills it, the rotation continues. Okay. So what they could have done here is they could have just made it so that their rotation pauses and then they still get the same one the next time. But they've gone all in on it, which I do like. I do like that they're adding a little bit of a more incentive to invade and actually play pressure in the early game. So like if you see that CDR totem is next up, you can really prepare for that and maybe get your soul laner in on the action or like your support or whatever and really try and go hard on the invade for like that CDR totem, which is usually the best one. That will be the one you want to deny the most. But just any of the ones you might want to deny from them, you can now do that, and then presumably it would cycle all the way back around until it gets back to CDR and 5 more rotations, and then they can finally get CDR. At which point, you could either invade it again if you wanted to be a real nutcase, or like you would have an upgraded CDR totem and they would only have the regular one. So that's pretty cool. I like that they're incentivizing invades with this. So these are all the upgrades and stuff. So all of the tier 1s, by the looks of it, are remaining the same, I think. But they're all going to be getting little small upgrades. So for CDR, it goes 10, 12.5, 15. For pen, it goes 5, 7, and 10 on the flat pen, but the percent penetration always stays at 5. So a little bit less of an upgrade on the golden one, I would say. Violet goes 10, 12.5, 15 attack speed. Crimson goes 10, 12.5, 15% lifesteal and physical ability lifesteal. And green goes 8, 10, 12% max health and mana. So this is a really cool system. It's not anything groundbreaking or whatever. It's not like a new mechanic entirely, but this just adds a lot more variety to the totem system. You're just going to scale those up throughout the game. It does introduce a little bit more stat bloat, but I think it's probably fine. I think the main issue will be like CDR totem being at 15 is kind of weird because there really aren't any 5% cooldown options in the game. So you're going to have a really weird situation where like you're either wasting that 5% or you're only getting to 35% in your build. Could be a little bit weird on some of these, but I do like the system overall. I think it's really great. Just adding a little bit more depth to the totem system, and also being able to invade them is pretty sick as well. They also made a change to back harpies. The fire giant side harpies no longer apply an attack speed debuff, so this is really nice for solo laners. Clearing those out, especially for certain solo laners, was really annoying in the early game once they applied that attack speed debuff to you. So that should help out some solo laners that don't particularly have strong level 1 clear to be able to actually do those back camps on their blue buff and get to lane in a timely manner. Moving on to Duel, they have unbanned all the gods in Duel. Let's read what they say about this. So over the past several months, we have rotated through a variety of Duel ban lists, but we understand that this system has been somewhat confusing or disappointing for players more unfamiliar with the mode. We have not yet seen significant change in the player population of Duel from this system, so I would like to return to having a focus being on player choice in the mode. I'm not a Duel player. I don't really know whether this is good or bad. Leave your thoughts down below if you're a Duel main on whether you like this or not. Personally, from looking outside in, I think this probably is good. I think it was probably going to be very annoying to just like sometimes, you know, your favorite 5 gods are just completely banned and you don't really want to play the mode at that point. Yeah, sure, it allowed some other picks to be viable that never would be, but like the Duel's not meant to be a balanced game mode, particularly. Like Duel is such a weird system that's so far from like Conquest that the game is balanced around that it's just never going to be balanced. You're never going to have characters that aren't broken in that mode. So from an outside looking in perspective, I think this is probably a good change, but I don't play Duel, so leave your thoughts down below if you have more in-depth thoughts on that and you're a Duel main. Eye of the Jungle, they have added 3% movement speed while in the jungle to this one. It definitely fell off a lot when they changed the attack speed on it. That was actually quite useful for a lot of junglers, so they're just adding a little bit extra to that. There's going to be a tier 2 item pass. So in 11.6, we are making sweeping changes to tier 2 items across the board. Our goal is to adjust the importance of certain power spikes throughout the game, as well as to further differentiate the items and their purposes. To achieve this, we have added many new tier 2 items and added passives to existing tier 2 items. In addition, many items have seen a variety of balance changes to really mix up build paths. We understand the concern that this change might add quite a lot of strength to many of these items, and in some way that reflects our goal of switching up and smoothing out power curves. However, our intention is that there should almost never be a situation where a tier 2 item is stronger than any of its upgrades throughout the entire game. Obviously, that makes sense. As this is such a big pass, we will be monitoring the items very closely and adjusting them accordingly in bonus balance and beyond. Okay, so it sounds like what they're doing is just making the regular tier 2 items a little bit sort of better to feel with. When they were teasing this on Twitter, they were saying like tier 2 item Tuesday or something like that. I can't remember what they were saying. They were teasing it on Twitter. I thought they were going to be bringing back proper tier 2 bridge items, man. A little bit sad that that's not happening. You know, like the old Glad Shield and Berserker Shield, like Ikov, all that kind of stuff that allows you to sort of sacrifice a little bit on your overall gold economy, especially as you push towards the late game, but to get that big power spike, and it was like a cool trade-off. Shame they're not adding that back, but they are making a pass on a lot of tier 2 items here that give sort of like mini versions of the passives, it seems like. So like Bound Gauntlet will now have a small version of Soul Eater passive. Cursed Gauntlet, they have just increased a lot of the lifesteal on it. I guess we'll go through all of these changes, so we may as well. It seems like these ones are going to be mixed in with regular changes as well. So Bloodforge, they've decreased the cost by 100. Short Bow, decreased cost by 100. Charge Bow, decreased cost by 200, and they have decreased the damage on it a little bit as well. That's a pretty cheap price though. You can maybe throw that in as like a tier 2 without a starter item. Probably not really that good of an idea, but you could try it. Hunter's Bow increased cost slightly and added 5 pen. Stormseeker increased cost by 200, increased the physical power by 5 and added 10 flat pen. That's an interesting change. Increasing the cost of it is specifically very negative to this kind of an item. You know, a 200 gold cost increase will hurt any item, but it's going to hurt Stormseeker even more, because if this prevents you from getting the item online when you could have got it online otherwise, and you have to go out, farm a little bit more and back, it's going to significantly impact your stacks and stuff. But having 10 flat pen on it is going to really help it as a rush early game, so like once you get that online, your damage isn't going to be quite as bad. Like the stats on this item are actually fairly competitive now for the cost. Piercing Morningstar, this is a new tier 2 on the Morningstar tree. It's going to be built into Heartseeker and has a mini version of Heartseeker's passive. Short Sword, which now built into Rage and Deathbringer only, has a new passive. When critically striking an enemy, you get a stack of 5 power and max 3 stacks for 5 seconds. And then they've added back 8-pointed Shuriken, which now built into Demon Blade and Bladed Boomerang, and that has a passive. When damaging an enemy god with a basic attack, you get 3% attack speed, max of 5 stacks on that. 1004 Blade, now built into Equinox, Hasty Katana, and Shadow Drinker, and they have got 5% movement speed for 10 seconds on kill or assist, and that stacks up to 3 times. Swift Edge is now the one that's going to be building into Serrated Edge, and has damaging an enemy god with an ability grants 3% movement speed towards them for 3 seconds, and that stacks up to 3 times as well. Balance Blade built into Executioner and Arcee, and on damaging an enemy god with a basic attack, you gain 2 flat pen, and that stacks up to 3 times. Honestly, I don't think we need to go over all of these now that I'm reading them. A lot of these are just like a similar version of what the tier 3 items passive is going to have. So basically, I'll scroll through these as I'm talking, but like the general gist of this is that all of the tier 2 items now are going to have like a little mini version of the tier 3 items passive or something similar to that, and they've just like moved around the costs a bit, moved around the like power values on stuff. This is probably going to cause a lot of weird balance issues. I imagine there's going to be some builds that arise where like some tier 2 items specifically are quite broken, and you can just like rush them and maybe not even finish them into the tier 3 until like much later in the game. Definitely will be interesting to play around. It looks like we're getting more down to some sort of normal changes here. That is the regular tier 2, but Book of Thoth is actually getting some changes down here. Okay, this one is actually quite interesting though. This is not just a regular tier 2 item change. So Book of Secrets builds into Tablet of Destinies and Book of Thoth. And it has a passive. Each time you damage an enemy god with an ability, you gain a stack. The stacks grant nothing, but when you upgrade this item, these stacks are transferred to the upgraded item. You may only gain 1 stack every 4 seconds. I can only gain stacks once per god per ability hit. So basically, you can now sort of start stacking your tablet or your book at the tier 2. That seems like it's going to cause some very interesting builds. Like, is rushing this viable now? You're going to skip out on a starter item, which is really rough in terms of your early game. This is definitely going to be worse in terms of being able to, like, clear the wave and pressure early game as a mid, but, like, being able to have that online immediately, this passive, and, like, probably farm up, you know, a few stacks before you even get to your Book of Thoth. Like, if you're already at 20 stacks or something before you, like, finish this in the Book of Thoth or Tablet of Destinies, that's going to be very interesting. So yeah, that's definitely more than a regular sort of tier 2 item just getting a similar passive to its upgrade. That is definitely worth noting there. Actually, going back, some of these, most of these probably are worth talking about. Actually, I won't skip over them. There's actually some quite interesting ones here after I just saw that Book of Thoughts change. So RC is losing 5 power but getting 10 flat pen, so that's going to make it much more competitive with Devos. Like, half the reason Devos is so good as a lifesteal rush is because it has 15 flat pen on it, so RC will compete a lot more with Devos now. Keen Blade is going to be building into kin size and duality, and that has a passive that your basic attacks deal an additional 10% basic attack power as physical damage. Shillelagh, passive, while you're under 25% mana, you're getting 20 MP5, so just a little mini version of Blackthorn there. For Frostbound, Heavy Hammer is going to have each time you basic attack an enemy god, you get a stack. When you have 4 stacks, your next basic attack slows them. So it's like a little 4 stacking up before you can get a little Frostbound Hammer effect. The Smithy Hammer is going to build into the other hammers. Not any real passive on that thing by the looks of it. Talon Trinket, passive, each second you're in god combat, you gain 1 magical power and 1% lifesteal for 5 seconds. And that's a max of 20 stacks. So on a tier 2 item, you could get 25% lifesteal in total. This is probably not going to be as great for, like, mid laners, but maybe on, like, a Hades solo or something, this could be good, because you're going to be in god combat basically the entire time in solo, so you're always going to be getting this passive value. Definitely interesting, for sure. Mystic Ring going to build into Demonic Grip and Hasten Ring. No real changes there, other than it just being a new tier 2 item. Enchanted Ring is now going to build into Telkines and Cyclopean only, and it has a passive. Your next basic attack deals an additional 5+3 per level magical damage and can only occur once every 8 seconds. Also reduced per successful basic attack, similar to Cyclopean Ring's passive. Moving on though, past Book of Thoughts and stuff, we already talked about that. Sorcerer's Staff has a new passive. On leveling up, you heal 10% max health and mana over 3 seconds. That's interesting. Probably won't get too much use out of that, I would say, but that's a pretty cool one. Enchanted Spear, on damaging an enemy god, once per god per ability, you gain 2 magical pen for 10 seconds. So that's very similar to, what did we see further up? Something else had this. Restored Artifact, on damaging a god, once per god per ability, you restore 1% mana, so that's interesting. It's going to give you a lot of mana sustain. Gem of Fate, they have finally reduced the cost of it. You can buy it for 750 gold now, so you can actually start this if you wanted to. Now you can start with 10% cooldown. Is it going to be game breaking? I highly doubt it. A lot of the Gem of Fate items are not something you want to rush. You know, Pribwin scales off of your prot, so you don't want to rush that. Arendite, maybe, but it doesn't have flat pen on it, so it's just like not really that good of a rush overall. Fail lots percent pen, so you probably don't want to rush that either. And Staff of Myrddin, again, similar thing. Like, you want to sort of have your items online before that. So you're probably not rushing this, but I guess you could maybe do a similar thing to, like, the earring tree, where you just buy like the tier 1 earring and leave it in your build for a while to get some MP5. Maybe you could do something similar and just pay 750 gold to get 10% cooldown in your build early on, and then just go into your other items. But it is going to slow down your power curve a lot. It's probably not something you want to do. Night Shield, 100 gold cheaper. Apprentice Staff, 100 gold cheaper as well. Honed Edge, same thing. Arendite, same thing. Man, Arendite's real cheap now, man. 2400 gold for what Arendite does is like kind of crazy. Sage's Stone, so this one now builds into Erosion and Abyssal Stone only. No passive on this one, just shifted around stats. Although I have to say, those stats are pretty good, dude. 150 health, 20 of each defenses for 1250 gold. That's pretty good. Enchanted Stone is going to be a new one, and this is entirely the same. Okay, I think this probably is supposed to be different. They have literally just copy-pasted the text from Sage's Stone. It even says it now built into Erosion and Abyssal Stone, when I assume it means it builds into the rest of the stone tree. That's probably wrong. I imagine Enchanted Stone is going to have some kind of different passive. Maybe it's going to have a little mini Stone of Binding passive on it or something. Emerald Mail, getting an assist on an enemy god or minion grants you 2 protections, max of 5 stacks for 5 seconds. Emerald Talisman, reduced cost to 1250. Could be maybe interesting in terms of rushing this. Probably not, though. Defender's Blade builds into Relic Dagger and Lotus Sickle, and that just has some stats for you. Lotus Sickle, they have increased the physical protections by 5. Curse Blade now has a mini anti-heal effect, similar to Toxic Blade, but at a reduced value. That's pretty interesting. You know, being able to just buy sort of a tier 2 cheap anti-heal if you wanted to. All this kind of stuff is going to have to get explored by people better at the game than I am, but I feel like some of these, for sure, are going to end up being items where you leave them at tier 2 for quite a while. And I think that's honestly kind of fine. Like, I think that's quite a cool little bit of tech that, you know, you can just sort of, if you don't want to fully invest into an anti-heal item yet, you could just kind of pick this up, pay like, what, 1200 gold, whatever this costs, and just sort of have anti-heal online. It's interesting. I feel like some of these will end up being like that for sure. Silver Talisman now builds into Pestilence only, and enemy gods, yeah, it's got a 15% anti-heal, so a similar thing. You know, if you just wanted a little bit of anti-heal and a little bit of stats, you could just stick at Silver Talisman for a while until, you know, maybe in the late game team fights you want to upgrade it if they got like an Afro mid or whatever and you're a solo laner. It'll be interesting. Renewing Talisman is going to build into the rest of the Talisman tree stuff, and you're going to gain a stack each time you damage or are damaged by an enemy god once per ability. Upon reaching 5 stacks, you lose all stacks and restore 100 mana in a 40 unit radius around you. Probably going to be quite hard to use because you don't really have control over when that goes off. Obviously, you're always going to get the mana, but you're not necessarily going to be able to like restore the mana to your mid or your jungle, whoever you're roaming with as a support. Spellbound Kusari now builds into only Hunters and Genji's. Shoguns is going to be further down here, and that has a new passive. When you're hit by an ability that deals magical damage, you gain 5% magical damage mitigation for 5 seconds, internal cooldown of 12. That's interesting. Specific types of damage mitigation on items, I believe, is something we've never seen in Smite. Osiris had it, well, it had it, sort of, still has it in a way, but now he's actually got symmetrical amounts of mitigation on his passive, but it used to be for a while that Osiris had significantly more physical mitigation than you had magical. But yeah, that's interesting, having specific magical damage mitigation on an item. That's, I wonder if, like, they're going to change Oni Hunters or anything. But Daimyo's Kusari is a new tier 2 that's going to be building into Void Domaru and Shogun's Kusari. Now, this is going to look wacky in the shop, man. Everyone's going to log in and haven't seen patch notes or whatever. They're just going to be like, what the hell is going on? There's so many new items. But this one has a passive. For each enemy god within 55 units of you, reduce all enemy gods' magical protections by 4. For each ally within 55 units of you, increase ally gods' attack speed by 5%. So that's notably powerful, I feel like. You know, if you stood in with, like, 4 people in a team fight, it's almost like a full Shogun's aura worth of stuff, and then you're also going to be getting, like, you know, up to 20 magical protection reduction there. That's pretty strong. Silver Breastplate now built into Breastplate of Regrowth and Breastplate of Valor only, and they have increased the cost, decreased the procs, but added 10% cooldown to it, so you can get a little bit of cooldown at the tier 2 there. Breastplate of Regrowth, they have increased the procs by 5, and there's a new Sturdy Breastplate, which is going to build into Spectral Armor and Contagion, and that one is just stats with no passive. Spectral Armor, they've removed the mana and the MP 5, but they have increased the health and added HP 5, and Contagion, they have done the same thing. That's going to make Contagion a really, really attractive item in the solo lane laning phase, man. If you're playing into someone with strong self-sustain, which is like a lot of solo laners, that's going to be really powerful. Like, pretty much every solo laner has some form of strong self-sustain and hard CC, so you're going to be getting a lot of value out of Contagion's, like, both Contagion's passives, and 25 HP 5 is extremely attractive in the laning phase for this item. Obviously, you lose the MP5, but, like, mana's usually not that big of an issue in solo lane when you have Totem and you have blue buff and all this stuff. Yeah, that's interesting. I think looking at Contagion Rush in quite a lot of matchups might be quite good now in solo. Spike Shield now builds into Gladiator Shield and Void Shield, and that is just stats on that one. Tower Shield is now building into only Phalanx and Berserker Shield, where previously it was all of them. And this one has a passive of each second you are in God combat, you gain 1% attack speed, and that's a max of 10 stacks. So similar to the Bancross Talon passive from earlier, I think this one's going to be really good. Because when you're building this in solo lane, you are permanently going to have this effect up pretty much. Unless you're like going for your buff or like the enemy isn't in lane or whatever. But if the enemy's in lane, you're pretty much always going to be slapping them with collateral damage from your abilities as you're clearing the wave and stuff like that. So you're pretty much going to get a permanent extra little 10% attack speed on this item. Not particularly going to be game breaking, I don't think, because you're not going to have this very long. You are going to want to finish off that Phalanx or Berserker Shield for sure, but that's going to be quite strong when you do have it. Steel Mail now built into Mystical Mail only and has a little mini Mystical Mail passive on it. Bronze Mail now built into the rest of the tree and has a passive on every 4th basic attack you are damaged by, grants you a 75 health shield, so if you get a little bit of extra sustain there against basic attack characters. Cloak of Concentration, which is going to be building into Mantle of Discord and Spirit Robe still, I assume, has a passive. When you're hit by a hard crowd control, you steal 10 protections from all enemy gods with it. Oh, that is strong. That is real strong, man. That's almost like tier 3. Because not only are you getting 10 flat pen against that guy, which isn't particularly useful in solo, but you're not rushing this item in solo anyway. Like, you would probably want this, if anything, the late game when you're sort of diving onto backliners, and you can use that 10 flat pen quite well. But then also, it's from all enemy gods within 20 units. 20 units isn't massive, to be fair. But if you can get this to hit like 2 or 3 people, you're going to be getting a decent amount of protections. I assume it steals both kinds as well, because it just says 10 protections. So yeah, I feel like you can absolutely farm with this. It's probably not worth staying on the tier 2 with this item, I don't think. Maybe sort of throughout the mid-game, you might stay on the tier 2 for this effect, though. That seems really strong. Mantle of Discord gets a 100 gold cost reduction as well, and that is it for all of the items. That was absolutely massive. I was going to originally just sort of skip past most of them, but it actually seems like a lot of them do have interesting passives, and I feel like some of these you might want to stick at tier 2 for a while, or you might want to change up what you're actually rushing into because the tier 2 is so powerful. And there was also a few changes as well to like regular tier 3 items as well, like Contagion and whatnot. So that was pretty cool. This is a lot of information to take in. We'll have to figure out what's strong when the patch drops or on PTS or whatever. Moving on to God changes though. Vulcan's finally getting some nerfs, thank God. They have increased the cooldown of his 1 by 1 seconds at all ranks, and Inferno Cannon, they have decreased the damage in the late game mostly, but a little bit in the early game as well, and then increased the cooldown by 2 seconds. Good changes. This cooldown absolutely had to go up. Being on 10 seconds was just so infuriating. Honestly, I would have been fine putting this to like 14 or something, or just having it where like it's on a 16-second cooldown if it gets destroyed or something. But then they would have to change the cooldown to be only going on cooldown when it gets destroyed, which maybe that's a good change, honestly. So you can't just have it up immediately after it's gone down. I don't know, but I like this change overall. It's still a good step in the right direction for making Vulcan way less annoying to play against. Cupid gets more basic attack power, base, and per level. Heart Bomb, the damage, the mana cost has been decreased by 10 at all ranks. And Flutter gets a new effect. On cast, double the attack speed gained from this ability for 4 seconds. I don't know how much this gives passively, but I don't think it's a massive amount, but this is still nice for Cupid. Being able to like use its ability, let's like run away and then turn on people, or use it aggressively or whatever, get that attack speed bonus. Danzaburo is getting buffs. God damn it, I hate this character. Why are they buffing him? He probably does need buffs, to be fair, but I'm annoyed about it. They have increased the damage mostly towards the late game on the base for Fool's Gold, and also the explosion damage by 10 at all ranks. Alluring Spirits, they have increased the healing by 10, scaling up to 30 depending on rank, and decreased the cooldown by 2 seconds in the early game, scaling down to nothing in the late game. And the Rocket, they have increased the explosion damage from 50% to 75% at the initial hit, so you can get a little bit more splash damage going on in team fights with that. These Danza buffs are fine. He's not exactly great right now. I was just trolling when I said don't buff him. Like, he probably does need the buffs. I just hate this character. Oh god, another ADC that I hate that probably does need buffs, but I don't want him getting them. Apollo, they have decreased the mana cost by 10 on his 1 at all ranks. Serenade, they have decreased the cooldown in the early game mostly, and also decreased the mana cost by 15. And then the moves, they have increased the buff duration of the protections that you get from 3 seconds to 5 seconds on this. So pretty minor Apollo buffs, honestly. Probably won't impact him too much. These are mostly like early game stuff, you know, decreasing the mana cost, decreasing the cooldown in the early game, mana cost stuff. Baron Samdi getting some buffs. That's interesting. I feel like Baron's not particularly bad right now, but you know what? I like Baron. I'll take some Baron buffs. They've increased his base health. Increase the double hit damage on Vivid Gaze from 15% to 25%. I like this overall. Like, it just generally incentivizes you a little bit more to hit those precision shots at the end of the beams rather than just hitting one beam on someone. And for wrap it up, they have decreased the slow duration and increased the root duration. So it's going to be the same amount of total time CC, but you're just going to get 25% more of that is rooted and a little bit less of it is slowed. Poseidon. What the hell? They're buffing Poseidon. Oh my god, that is insane. So what, they've increased his base attack speed, they have increased Trident attack speed by 5% at all ranks, they have increased Whirlpool's damage scaling per tick by 5%, and increased the damage on the center hit of Kraken by 10%. So, not absolutely enormous buffs, but I really feel like Poseidon doesn't need them, dude. Like, not too long ago, Poseidon was absolutely dominant, and I still feel like he's incredibly good, he's just not used all that much. Be ready for Poseidon, boys. I think he's gonna be coming back. Still getting some buffs as well. This is probably fine. They have decreased the mana cost of her 1 in the late game mostly. 100 mana is a lot in the late game. That's absolutely fine. They have increased the damage to minions from 20% to 30% on Crush now, so she's absolutely deleting minion waves, man. And then Sentinel, they have increased the cast range from 65 at ranks 1 to 4 to 70 at all ranks, so you no longer get that increase in range from having this thing max rank. It's just gonna be 70 all the time. And they have increased the MP5 on the ability by 4 at all ranks, so a little bit more mana for Scylla available there. So mostly early game buffs and quality of life for Scylla. She's going to have a little bit more mana available in general, and she's going to have more damage to minions. Freya buffs, they have increased her base health and decreased the cooldown of Banish by 3 seconds towards the early game and 1 second in the late game. So this is pretty impactful. You know, this going from 19 to 16. You're going to have this ability up rank 1 for a long time as Freya, so it's pretty impactful there, being able to get her a little bit more safe, a little bit more engage. I kind of like this. If they were going to buff Freya, it's better than to do it like sort of this way, buff her utility a little bit more rather than just straight up giving her more damage. Hell, they have increased the heal from 7, scaling up to 15 plus 0.9 per level, to 10, scaling up to 18 plus 1 per level. And they have also increased the self-heal per level from 5.5 to 6 as well, so just a little bit more healing for Hell there. Switch stances, they have increased the radius from 30 to 55. That is pretty massive in terms of like the stats that this thing is giving. And it also has a new effect. It grants 10 to 30 physical power to allies. Did this thing already give magical power? Is that why they're only adding physical power to it? Yeah, she gets magical power from being in Dark Stance, and half of those are shared with nearby allies. So yeah, it was already sharing magical power, so it's now just going to be sharing both magical and physical power with allies. Obviously, Hell doesn't need the physical power, it's not Smite 2. Fenrir now deals 75% of the damage in the AoE with Brutalize. Was this 50% before, I think? Cleaner, they have increased the buff duration of her passive from 5 to 6 seconds and also decreased the cooldown by 1. And Banshee's Wail, they have increased the screen damage scaling from 40% to 50%, so just some little cleaner buffs there. RTO getting some stuff. They have increased the heal enormously on the 1. God damn. So early game, like rank 1 style, is going to be exactly the same. But then as you get towards the late game, it's going to end up being double in the late game at rank 5. That is kind of crazy. They've also decreased the cooldown on that by 1 second. Decreased the cooldown on Maul Prey as well by 1 second. Life Tap, they have increased the heal. Not quite as dramatically as on the 1, but still a pretty substantial increase there. Increased the damage scaling per hit by 5% and also shifted the mana cost to be 55 at all ranks instead of more as you rank it up. And Heavy Charge, they have increased the damage scaling as well by 5% and done the same thing to the mana cost. So some pretty substantial RCO buffs there, especially this one. That is absolutely enormous. Sylvanas, they have given him more base health, more base physical protection, and more physical protection per level. Just make him a little bit tankier. Obviously quite easy to isolate Sylvanas, so having him be a little bit tankier is going to help him. Amaterasu, they have increased her basic attack power per level from 2 to 2.2. They have increased the heal on her 1 quite substantially. This is going from 10 scaling up to 42 to 15 scaling up to 55, so a pretty substantial increase on her healing there. Decrease the mana cost of her dash to 60 all ranks. This is a particular one that I noticed like really drains Hammer's mana pool in the early game especially, so this is really nice. And Dazzling Offensive, they've taken 5 seconds off of the cooldown, so it's now one of those sort of more standard 90 to 70 scalings rather than 95 to 75. Very powerful ultimate. This being on 70 seconds in the late game is going to be kind of crazy. Horus, they have increased the buff duration of his 3 from 3 to 5 seconds, so we're giving a little bit more prots out there. And then To Disguise has also been moved down to 90. And finally, it seems like we got a few quality of life changes for gods. So they have increased the projectile speed of Bakka's ult by about 15%. This is fine. I don't want Bakka being meta, but this probably isn't going to make him meta. It's going to make him feel a little bit better. Sometimes it can be hard to hit those ults at like long range. Yu Wang, they have improved the post-fire and pre-fire times for a more smoothing fire experience on dueling dragons and also increased the projectile speed by roughly 15%. I don't play much Yu Wang, but I remember when I did play him around his release, it did feel really weird to use this ultimate, so improving the pre-fire and post-fire time should help with that. Looks like Kali's getting something more significant. So Kali's unique targeting mechanic has gone through several changes throughout her long tenure on the battleground, but never has felt this clean. Due to the nature of her kit, Kali will often heavily commit to one foe, and now she is able to adjust her target at will, so she will be more empowered than ever before to strike them down. Of course, because Kali has this extra freedom, the strength of the target effect must also go down, but we think having the extra utility will feel very, very good. Additionally, Nimble Strike's healing change will now allow her to gain a small heal even if the target she's hitting is not low. No more feeling bad about leaping into camps or starting an engagement with her jump. So what have they done here? Kali is now able to reselect her target while in base. Good change overall. This can be done by pressing the basic stack input, which will then bring up her passive UI menu, so similar to Achilles changing armor and stuff like that. You're able to right-click on the passive UI menu to close it without making a selection, and you're able to right-click while in base to disable the ability to reselect a target until you re-enter the base, so very similar to Achilles there. They have decreased the pen that it offers from 10 to 5, and they have decreased the kill assist goal bonus from 30 to 20. Dude, what a fall from grace for Kali's passive, honestly. Like, this used to be so insane. It used to be like 20, maybe even 30% pen. It was at least 20 at one point. The kill assist goal bonus, I think, has actually always been at 30. This might be the first nerf for it, but then obviously the healing has been taken down from like 90, what it started at, to like 40 or something now. Dude, what a fall from grace. But Nimble Strike can now select Kali's target for her, so when she leaps onto an enemy guard, the lowest current health guard is marked automatically. So if you like blink in on someone, you get them low. It doesn't necessarily even matter if they're target if you can manage to land this jump on them. The healing effect of this ability has also been adjusted from 15% of the target's missing health to 20 up to 100 base plus 10% of their missing health. So overall, good changes. It will make Kali feel a bit better to use. It just feels like her passive has been absolutely good over the years, man. Maybe justifiably so, but I did like how ridiculously powerful it was sometimes. You know, it really made Kali feel a lot more unique. You know, now she's still gonna obviously want to go for her targets, but she has been made a little bit more generic over time with this. It really felt like, you know, if she was going for a target, she was unstoppable, and if she wasn't, she was kind of, you know, a bit weak. Whereas now it's just kind of been like evened out a little bit, I suppose. But I do like the new mechanic of being able to select a new target with her one. Cerberus, they have improved the pre-fire and post-firing times on his 3. This one is another one that felt kind of weird. It actually felt like it had a very long pre-fire time. And then Stygian Torment, Cerberus is no longer crippled or slowed during the use of this ability. So no longer being slowed is interesting because that really does affect things sometimes. You know, if you're trying to get like a max range ult, you would often like slow yourself so much that you would actually miss them with it. So that's really nice. No longer crippled. I don't really know what that means. Does that mean he can jump during the channel of it? I assume not. Can you blink while crippled? You can't, right? I don't think you can anyway. Maybe that allows Cerberus to sort of do a bit of Smite 2 action and like blink during the animation of like this charging up. I don't really know what this means, to be honest. And finally, for the quality of life god changes, Atlas's enhanced basic attacks can now proc basic attack item effects for 50% of the damage and healing. So just a nice change for Atlas there. We've got some more like ability item procking shenanigans as well here. So the following abilities can now proc item ability effects. Cthulhu's Sever, which is his one during his ult for regular damage. That's kind of crazy, dude, being able to proc Soul Reaver at, like, regular value with his one that's on, like, a, 1 point something second cooldown with back CDR. Chernobog's passive will now proc item effects at 100% damage and effectiveness. That's really good for him. Pele's Magma Rush will proc it at 25%. This thing ticks very frequently, so that's very nice for Pele. My man, Party Trick, which is her one, can now proc it at 25%. Another big buff for Mambajeet there as well. And then Jablanca's Branching Bowlers can also proc at 25%. I don't know, dude. Ability Jablanca has always felt like it was right on the edge of viability. Will this make it viable? Probably not. You probably still want to build in attack speed and stuff, but that's interesting. The following abilities can now be fired targeting close to or inside walls. So, Skadi, Permafrost, Poseidon, Release the Cracker, and Bakasura Regurgitate, Savannah's basic attacks, Ishtar Strike, Short, Jingwei, Persistent Ghost, Muzenkamp, Pony, Freya Banish, and Ymir Ice Wall. Well, that is finally everything for the mid-season patch notes. It was a very long one with a lot of, like, small changes, I would say. There's nothing absolutely major here other than, like, the tier 2 item rework, but that in itself is, like, a bunch of small changes that we had to go over. Some pretty crazy stuff. Very excited to give this patch a try. Maybe I'll hop on some PTS and bring you guys some gameplay. We'll see. But yeah, what do you guys think of this patch? Do you think it's a good one overall? Enough content for like a mid-season patch? Let me know down below and I'll catch you guys in another one later on. Have a great day and peace out, you nerds.